Okay, so welcome, Sophie Mahir. So pleased to have you here to have this little chat with me.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'll just introduce you quickly, and then we can get into the conversation. So I'll just introduce what Creative Spirit is about too. So it's basically where I have conversations with artists about what really matters to them in their art, what it is that motivates them to create, and yeah, so what's their bigger purpose and their contribution to the world? What do they feel that they are bringing to the world with their unique skills? So before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people of the country on which we meet, work, love, play, and to honour their elders past, present and emerging. So Sophie's originally from the UK and has relaunched herself in Perth, Australia after a 12-year gap. She previously built her well-recognised and successful semi-abstract art business, creating original boat, harbour and sea-themed acrylics and oils on canvas. She was selling mostly via London art galleries, large art fairs, her own artist open house and her agent. During her time away from her art between 2008 and 2020, she focused on helping small business owners like herself to set up and grow profitable businesses. As a fully qualified and experienced art teacher and now business coach, Sophie ran a full coaching practice from the south coast of England, till her drive to explore and travel meant she sold up and took her business online. Adventure brought her to Australia, and fast forward to 2021, where she not only paints again, but is the founder of her new business, Sophie Mahir, where she helps artists to make a living from their art or creativity. She's still inspired by the seaside and has created a fantastic, fresh new collection with strong colours, architectural shapes and inspiration from locations around the world. You'll recognise three central themes in her painting: buildings, boats and beaches. So Sophie, you've come up with a talk for today, title for today's talk, A Little Touch of Abstract. And what strikes me when I read your bio was you had that 12-year gap. Now, what was it that motivated you to get back into painting?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, because I remember when I left the art world, left the painting, I thought I was closing the door on it for good. There wasn't a single moment where I thought, oh, I'll probably do that, or I'll, open that door again in the future. It was closed and gone. And I used to say to myself, as a coach, oh, if only I, just coached artists, or, if only I had a really good sort of niche market. But it never, ever crossed my mind. But somehow when you cross continents, all your former beliefs go out the window. And as I landed here, which is a total accidental happening anyway, as I landed here and met the man that I'm now engaged to, he said to me, well, you've made this big journey, you've made this big change, and you're now deciding to stay here. If you could do anything, what would you do? And I really stopped in that moment and thought, oh, hold on a minute. If I could do anything, I'm being given a fresh start at this point. And I just immediately said, I'd paint again.
Wow.
And, it's a intuitive internal feeling. The challenge was I hadn't done it for 12 odd years, and I just spent 2-3 years making a huge mess. But it was that moment of, what if you could do anything? Like, this is the moment to pick up the dream ticket and reform your life. I still had an online business, but I wasn't very happy with it. Wasn't working with the right group of people. All the things come together, don't they? And so it was like, well, if I'm going to pick this up, I've really got to mean it. And I started to get art materials, and God, I made a mess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've seen your work, the latest stuff, and so yeah, for the viewers, Sophie's just had a very successful open house exhibition in her house in Perth. And, you know, with COVID and everything, that was just such a clever way to go. And her work is just fabulous. So anyway,
well, thank you.
Back to you, Sophie.
It didn't start that 3-4 years ago. I've got canvases I've painted over about 6 times.
Yes. Yes, yeah. I know you were doing a lot of work in the last year.
Yeah.
Especially,
then
yes.
It came to a point where I think I needed to give myself permission to just play with no outcome. And so it was very much a case of like, there's no exhibition, there's no outcome. I'm just going to play. And so, yeah, I tried, you know, acrylics and oils and mixed media and collaging, and oh my God, it's all out there on social media. I've hidden a lot of it, but there's still a few really awful things viewable. Most of it's, you know, been hidden, but you have to go through that because art is a process, isn't it? And so if I'd realized then what I know now, I would have gone into it probably even more. But anyway, here I am now, sort of in flow and looking forwards.
Well, I love how you made that big change. I mean, crossing the world and then deciding, right, do something else totally different.
Yeah, it's the opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, if you've done that, what else can you change in your life? You know, you don't want to go half measures, right? You don't want to go, well, hey, I'm leaving one continent, moving to another, and I'm going to do the same thing.
I'm going to settle down. And
I'm going to settle down. It's like, I'm not a settled downer anyway, but yeah.
Great. Yeah, so what is it about art that motivates you? I mean, motivate is actually almost a mild word to use, isn't it?
Drive.
Yeah.
Drives. What is it about art? Well, what comes up for me, and I think that I've also on a kind of journey of, well, where do I take my art now? And there's a one-word answer that always has driven me, but I think it's only become conscious in the last couple of weeks, and it's going to sound really silly, but it is color. It's completely color. And I realized that wherever I go, whatever I do, like I can be going to the supermarket, I could go for a walk somewhere. The thing that impresses something onto me is color. The thing I react to is color. You know, I was taken to sit in the red Rothko room very, very early on in London. And for anyone who's ever sat in the Rothko room with all the Rothkos around the wall, the red ones, and it's pretty big, massive emotional impression, especially for someone fairly young. That intense color stuck with me. And I think part of my journey growing up was also a big inspiration was my art teacher at school, who very, very sadly passed away recently. And he was a massive inspiration. And I think color for him was also huge. And he was also probably what you put in the semi-abstract genre. He painted acrylics, but they were bright and vivacious and very sculptural also, which I think my work has been as well. And he was obsessed with the post-impressionists. And so when I was going through the secondary part of my schooling, you know, the only artists that we ever learned about were Van Gogh, Gauguin. So it was like everything started with those two and went on from there. So of course, that's color immediately. So you've got all these sort of, so art history is also a massive, massive part of my background. I studied it, I was surrounded by it. And, you know, it's the one thing I kind of miss being on this side of the planet.
Yes.
To all that Renaissance stuff, anything really, anything.
Yeah, because there's all that art history over there in Europe and the UK, and then there's the colour here.
Yes, absolutely. Isn't that interesting? Because it's like I lived in a world with just lots of grey. So I mean, we do have a blue sky, and we do have a rich green in the summer in the fields. But overall, when you think of the UK, I think of grey.
Yes.
Tones of grey, and they can be very, very beautiful. I'm not saying that they're not, but when you come here, it's rich greens, and then you've got the wildflowers with all these insane reds and pinks and purples and splashes of yellow and white, and then you've got blue sky, turquoise water, and it's all just. And then there's the buildings. Don't even get me started on the buildings. Of somebody who likes buildings, there's all these different coloured buildings as well. So it's an onslaught to your senses if you're sensitive to color, right? If you're not, I suppose you just go, oh, it's blue sky and sea, whatever. But it's like,
wow.
I realize I am quite sensitive to color, and it's an impression that's on me all the time. Yeah.
And it sounds like it really sort of livens you up, you know. It's just kind of
definitely. I think living, well, you know, for a lot of people, no one really wants to live in the grey sort of damp drizzle. That's what I think of in the UK now. But when I realise now that I'm far more alive in a sense here because of the colours, and I'm very, you know, lucky that I live up in the hills, so I'm very, in the springtime is my favourite time here. So the colour around, I watch the greens shift just, you know, just on my doorstep, literally, and the flowers come out and all the different colours, and then, you know, you look up at the sky and it's like blue. So
color.
yeah, it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
big impression.
So Sophie, just as we were getting started, you said you've got some different answers to some of the questions that I'd said to you in advance. So tell me, what's been happening?
I think I'm doing quite a big course at the moment, a painting course, and it's not just a painting course. It's like my dream course. It's a mixture of personal development and painting. I couldn't have wished for anything better. And I think what it is partly enabling me to become a little bit more conscious about what I like and what I don't like. And so there's a central theme to this course around observing differences. And I think it's made me much more consciously aware of, well, what do I like? Why am I doing this? You know, what is the driver? And what is the driver, what is it I'm also wanting to communicate? You know, what is my message? I don't want to just say I'm a painter and I paint, you know, pots and flowers, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But I think it's not about that for me. I think it's actually about birthing more the core message a little bit more. It's definitely personal journey. And again, so I think the change really is around conscious awareness of what and why and how and wherefore I'm doing this. And like you said at the beginning, what legacy I want to leave behind, not just a little collection of pretty paintings. So it now needs to go, I want to go a level deeper. And so it's, well, what is the message? What is it that I'm wanting to portray? What is the reaction? What is it? What it's all, you know, what is it all about? So that's, I think, the sort of basic. So I did make some notes originally, and I was just amusing myself going, okay, so these are the answers I wrote then. Right, interesting. Okay, and I had lots of question marks for some of the questions that you'd sent me. And now I think, you know, there's much more of an answer. There's more of a conscious awareness around what I'm doing. I think also my process, I was very an intuitive painter. So I just used to go at it, and I would keep going at it until I got it where I wanted to go, or where I thought it wanted to go. And now I'm learning to be more discerning, and to actually again choose, why am I putting that there, or how am I reacting if I put something there? Well, how does that change the composition? And so again, the central theme of becoming more consciously aware, and therefore choices involved, and therefore, you know, choosing the next brush stroke or the next, you know, thing that you do. Got some practice panels all over the floor and propped everywhere, and just before I went to bed last night, I got out the sandpaper. I ruined my nails, and I just thought, I'm just gonna scrape on that one. And it's like, I need to go to bed really, rather than starting doing this at this point in time. But it was like, yeah, I just need to do that. And so again, just kind of, I just feel more driven to paint now than I've ever felt in my whole life, I think.
So, Sophie, are you ready to share any of the answers that you've been coming up with?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, good, okay. Because you've told us that that's what you've been sort of focusing and more conscious of, so I'm just interested. Yeah. So
what would you like me to share?
Well, what you mentioned, legacy. And you know, that question that I asked, or the topic that I covered in the early part about what do you feel is your contribution to the world?
And it's such a huge question. And I
It is.
think I can answer it today. And I reckon in a year's time, there might be a different answer, but that's okay, isn't it? I think, yeah. I think the biggest challenge as an artist, we always think we want to come up with something unique and something different. And I think actually, instead of doing that, I think the contribution, well, it feels like at the moment, is actually around authenticity. So long as I can put on the canvas or board or wood or cardboard or plastic or whatever I decide to paint on, what is me, and I can inspire other artists, because you know me, I'm a bit of a trailblazer and a bit of a leader in that way. If I can sort of inspire others to not be afraid to put themselves onto the canvas. And I think one of the downfalls of social media, and you know that I love it, but one of the downfalls is we can scroll every day and we look at other people's work. And as a painter, we tend to look at other people's work, and that you can end up just going, oh my God, I like that. Oh, mine's rubbish compared to that. And end up getting into this state of trying to paint like somebody else or sculpt like somebody else or do like somebody else because you think that is better. And I think the piece that I want to leave behind is about find what it is in you and get that out any which way, and stop worrying or looking at other people. And I think for me, it is that piece around color. I started with color when I was 18, 19. I did a really highly specialized 3-year color course at a really specialized college called Tobias School of Art in the South England. It's got a Rudolf Steiner background. I went on to be a Rudolf Steiner art teacher, and again, I'm one of 6 people only with that specific qualification, because they only ran the course for 2 years. Anyway, sidetrack. But I started there at maybe I was a little bit older than 18, 19. I came out of school, also a Steiner school, and went into where my mother was working. So my mother was a painter, but again, she was a Rudolf Steiner painter, and she painted in watercolors, very abstract, we would say. So I was surrounded by that. And I really wanted to be a part of what she was doing, not because she was doing, because I liked what was coming out of the studio, and I'd never seen anything like that before. And so I begged for them to actually enroll me into the course way before I was supposed to be 21. And I was like, I don't care. I want to do this course. I'm not waiting. I'll turn 21 at some point. Just let me in. Of course, because, you know, my mother was teaching the foundation course. And I suppose in the end, they were just like, well, we better just let her in. So they let me in. And we spent 2 years only painting color. So it was not about form or composition necessarily, but it was actually, you know, bearing it right down to basics. How does blue react? What is blue? Warm blue, cool blue? You know, we went through all the colors, then how did they react together? And we did a really intense second year. And when I think back to that, I think those were, and I've actually got one, I'm trying to think, I think it might be on the slide. I found a little old photograph. You remember those real things? A real photograph of a piece I'd done in the second year. And I think to this day, it's the best thing I've ever done. Forget the nice paintings you saw at the Open Studio. This for me was the core. There's something in that I need to get back to again. And then in the third year, we could choose. Some of us went and did the education, and a lot of people went and did the art therapy, because that's what the college was famous for. But me being, again, a trailblazer, I wanted to do the education. And so I bullied the people in the office all over the world. And they put together a course, because we went in there, a few of us, and we just stood in the doorway and we were like, we want this person from Hawaii and this person from, you know, put together the education course for the upper school in the Steiner system. And in the end, they went, okay, well, you got to pay for 2 years up front, or whatever the deal was. And we were like, we're in, let's do it. So we literally were the only, I think 6 of us in the end went through went through one of the 2 years and came out as qualified upper school art teachers, which I then went on to do. But what the whole part of that is, it was about color, and it started with color, and it was very, very unique. And there was no looking at anybody else's, really. It was very much authentic. We put on the canvas us, you know, it was my journey. My friend put on her journey. And I think one of the massive downfalls of all this stuff all over the internet is we just can end up searching. We drift through Pinterest, you drift through Instagram, and like, oh my God, look at this and look at that. Oh, I think I want to be an abstract painter because I like this person. Oh no, actually, what I really want to do is paint still lifes because I love the way this lady, and I need to do collage because I love her collage. It's not about that. That's their journey. We've got to find what our journey is. And so the journey I'm on is the authentic journey. And for me, the legacy is around leaving my own art through my journey, not attached to, or, you know, obviously one can be inspired by, but not attached to other people's, really being able to dig deep enough in myself and trust in myself to put on the canvas what is right. And if people look at it and hate it, so be it, but it's me. And this is the edge of the precipice I sit on now, because you're quite right. And you said in your introduction, and that's what I built a career on, you know, harbors, boats, and all that kind of sea stuff that was appropriate for the UK, because the places that lit me up were all the shapes and colours and textures of Cornwall, of Suffolk, where my father still is, and so I spent a lot of time there, some of the South Coast. But I don't live there anymore, I live here. And so the transition needs to be in all areas: subject matter, colour choice. And it's a huge leap, right? I've just done Open Studio and people could see paintings of Cornwall, paintings of Morocco. Those are both my past. I married a Moroccan, I have 2 beautiful Moroccan daughters. This is all to do with the past. And so it's being able to be brave enough, strong enough, powerful enough to close the door on that and know that that's okay, and open up a new door, which is more adventure, more excitement, and to walk through that to that more authentic piece. See, the choices I made in all the paintings in the open house were color based. It was color first and composition second. And actually what I really realized that I learned way back, and I'm relearning now, is composition first and color second, because composition obviously, you know, leads to a painting that works or doesn't work, and the color is actually secondary. But whereas for me, the color is the most important. I've just got to be strong enough and brave enough to get that composition working and then put in the color. And I've made a vow to myself to stop looking on social media, because I think it's a killer, right? It's a killer. And the challenge is that, like you said, with my other business, I work with artists. And so I want to follow all their accounts and like what everyone's doing. But I need to do it in such a way where I'm not going, oh, well, I want to paint like that. I want to do that. I could do that, because that's not my journey. It's, you know, that's not my journey. So I dive back into colour and how the colours work together. And I'm going to take what I learned back then and what I'm learning now and to move that forward.
Yeah.
Hopefully we got there.
Well done. No, that's lovely. I mean, it's obviously, it's you that's the work in progress, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting when I, you know, was going through these questions, and where was it? There was one, you know, you said, what does your practice express for you? Well, when I wrote that down, like you said, you're in a journey. And then what I realized was, you know, this was my official launch just now, but 2 years ago, I had a little exhibition with another beautiful artist here in Perth. I was on the edge of a really big illness, and I just painted the illness. And I knew I wasn't really ready. When she said, do you want to exhibit? I thought, that's great, something to work towards. But as we got closer and closer and closer, I knew that actually all I was doing was painting my illness on the canvas, and that really I didn't want to show it. And if I could have got out and backed out, I would have done. But in the end, I just put a smiley face on and went through it, because I thought, a bit like, you know, newspaper gets wrapped around tomorrow's fish and chips and it's gone. I thought, you know, it's great for her to show her work, and her work was beautiful, and mine just was lots of paintings of illness all around the walls, which have all been covered in white and reconstructed as something else now, or just got rid of. So I think you do paint yourself very much. I think that's very obvious where you're at, isn't it? By, you know, you saying the collection downstairs, or the ones that are still here, they're strong, they're bright, they're you know, they're me now, healthy and well and excited and exuberant and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was interesting. I just went obvious when I was ill, and then I painted my way out. And I really feel like that was the piece for me. I had chronic fatigue. I'm still not 100% better, but 2 years on, I painted myself well. I really believe that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lovely. So I'm glad you mentioned about the slides that you've got, because I was so enjoying the conversation, I'd forgotten about the slides. So let's go with those.
All right. Okay. So, okay. All right. So on screen, we have a very, very early work. So post my course, but when I launched myself as a professional artist, back then I left my teaching job at the Brighton Steiner School. This was about 2003, I think. And I dived into colour, and I was very inspired by beach huts and so forth. So I just went with picking out the basic shapes of beach huts. And interesting enough, I went to 2 colours that I've never used since. And this is crazy, really, because those sold within about 5 minutes of the private view opening up, all 3. They just went bang, bang, bang.
Wow.
And if that wasn't a sign of, you know, you're on the right track, I don't know what is. And I don't know if it was the red or whatever it was, but somehow I went in, well, you'll see what I went into, but I didn't choose these colors again. And I want to find out and work out why I didn't choose these colors again. Obviously complementary, so that was picking up on my training. You know, I still kept to some of the real foundations, but yeah, massive hits. Never painted that color again. So look at 2021, 22, because I think red and turquoise might be coming your way.
Well, and I associate turquoise with you especially.
Oh, definitely.
And the reds and pinks. So
I know, it's quite funny, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
But instead I went this way, right? I went into blue and yellow and orange. I went into safety, some could say, I suppose, which has been a theme and a symbol to a lot of my work with the harbours, and these enclosed areas were very, very much about safety. And so these are pieces from the UK. Obviously, the one on the right is Polperro. The one on the left, I think, actually were just some steps from probably Mousel or what, but nowhere specific. And again, they sold like hotcakes. So they were all done with palette knife. So that's why they have a funny textured look. They painted the entire painting with acrylics that were made more liquid with various mediums. It's completely against everything you've ever learned about painting, right? And then I applied that with the palette knife. What that meant was it was lots of translucent layers. And so the color was really intense, and people used to ask me if they were oils. And I actually joined the National Acrylic Painters Association off the back of this kind of like, I'm fed up with this, I'm not painting oils, I'm painting acrylics. So yeah, that was my thing, and it took forever. I mean, you know, what a daft way of doing it. But obviously what I wanted to get across was the richness of the color. And so on this next, you sort of see the move from the blue period to the pink and brown period. And I think this was where I allowed the outside world to determine what I was doing. So the one on the left was a turning point piece. Again, that's Polperro. I don't think that really matters so much. But I had been mucking around with paintbrush and all sorts of things, and I hadn't really made a decision. Was I doing this palette knife thing? Was I doing brush? What was I doing? And I think I'd even enrolled at a university course to sort of get some traditional art on top of the other sort of training I had. And my tutor took one look at my painting and she said, "What are you doing here?" She's like, "Leave." I think I was allowed maybe a term, and then she just went, "Leave, you don't need to be here. Get out, do your thing." But she said, "Stick with what you've got. You've really got something." And instead of allowing that to inform my decision to go, okay, she really likes that, I completely and 100% allowed that to become my thing, without stopping and saying, well, is that what I want to do? I mean, it served me well for a few years. The one in the middle was a sales turning point. And I think the real reason I like that still, it's much more, it was much quicker, more immediate. But I look at it now and I think the composition's pretty lousy. But my agent absolutely loved it, and she sold it within 5 seconds. And she said, you could just make more like that. And she said, think about the London houses. We need some more muted tones, goes better with the furniture.
Oh dear.
Okay, so now we hit the brown and muted, or what we used to call in the UK, the Farrow and Ball era. And I love Farrow and Ball wall paints, but there are, or I'm sure they're still in existence now, all those soft muted colours that were very trending at that point on walls.
What Billy Connolly called beige.
Beige. Well, no, okay, so Farrow and Ball were known for their greys, their like powder greens, their gunmetal, whatever it was, all those sorts of colours. They were all had a hint of grey in them, and people were larding them on the walls like it was going out of fashion. And then, of course, these colours went very well on those walls. So I, dubbed it the Farrow and Ball collection. And the run on the right, again, sold within seconds of the door opening to the private view. And I was like, okay, brown and pink, we're on a winner, off we go. So off we went, brown, grey and pink. Now, the thing is, they are quite representational of the UK, right? Look at all that gunmetal grey, that grey blue. And I got really into those colours and I loved them. And, those did sell 100%, they sold, and they sold to, the target market. But you know what started to happen? I started to detach emotionally from the work, and it became I need this number of paintings for the next collection. These colors are in, let's just keep going with this. And I was no longer lit up lighting and painting them. And although I still love the one on the right, I actually have that in my storage unit. I didn't put it for sale. I'm trying to think what's on the next. Let me just go to the next. Oh no, okay, go back to that. I didn't add it. I was trying to keep the numbers down so I didn't have this huge slideshow for you. So I still love them, but I started to feel like I was in a conveyor belt. And, there was the art fair in a month's time, followed by the open studio, followed by a solo show, followed by the agent ringing and saying, I'm taking you to this fair. I need, this number by this date. And it all just became very formulaic, and I disconnected from it. And so by 2008, I started to crash and burn creatively, not health-wise. I just couldn't. I remember standing in the studio, and I had 5 easels, and the one on the left had background on it. And I used to paint dark background so that I would go dark, dark, dark brown, or dark, dark, dark blue. I never used black. And then I would paint to the light. So they always had a black underground or dark underground. I still like doing that to this day. So it would be dark background, and then the next one would have the initial marks on it, and then the next one would have the next layer. And I would literally go around the 5. Number 5 was almost finished, and then I would move them on. So I had created my own little
conveyor belt.
I had in my studio my own conveyor belt going. And I remember standing there one day going, I don't even like these. What am I doing? I don't know what to paint anymore, because I was having to do it, I was doing it full time, and I was having to meet the demand. I didn't have that time to step back and think, no, okay, now wait a minute, where am I going creatively? I didn't take any courses. I didn't have time to take any courses. We didn't have online learning at that point anyway, but I could have found an artist to work with, or I just was like, I just need to keep doing it. And so, of course, I started turning out rubbish. I didn't decide not to show you the rubbish, but it was like, they were awful. And one of the galleries I had in Suffolk, I was too embarrassed to send her the next lot of stuff, because I just said, these are not good. I need time to come up with something different. But I didn't find that time. Instead, I decided to pull the pin. And it was that moment when I was asked for 10 more by Friday. I think it was the 10 more by Friday. I just need 10 more by Friday, and I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm not the conveyor belt, even though I realize now I had become the conveyor belt. And, you know, thoughts gone through my head like, where's the real me gone? You know, is this what I wanted to paint? I don't know what I want to paint, and I'm not enjoying it anymore. So I rang my galleries and I said, I'm pulling everything out. And they were like, what are you doing? I said, I'm pulling it all out and pulling it down. And I'm quite black and white, me. Once I've made a decision, I'm all in. So I didn't stop to think about it. I didn't stop to think, should I just take 6 months off? It was like I shut everything down. And so that was maybe, and then I went into personal development, coaching business, the rest is history. But I literally sold all my blank canvases. I kept a few art materials, but most stuff just went. I had a studio in my garden at that point. So, you know, I could just keep stuff in there. And so we transitioned on to, to 2020. And I finally found that next step. And the color is back in, the strength is back in. The aerial viewpoint that I became famous for is still there. And I still like that because it's, you know, you see that it's about buildings, boats and harbour. There's a lot more space around it this time. And it's just about placement of boats, really, and buildings. And so, you know, we've got slightly different colours. We've got a hint of red there. It's that sort of dragon fruity pink colour that I love so much. And that was the first piece where I stood back and thought, okay, I'm back. And I'm happy with that.
I'm so pleased you're back.
It was such a relief, Iris. It was and I thought, don't get your head involved, right? Don't stop to analyze. Oh, well, you know, I'm in Perth. I shouldn't be. I just was like, just keep moving forwards. Now I just don't know what's on the next slide. Okay, there we go. That's what's on the next slide. And so there's a series of the pinky ones, and then it was like, okay, I need to dip into my other roots. And I actually got asked to maybe contribute to something, but only if I were doing something more along the Moroccan lines. And that just gave me a reason to paint what I'd always wanted to paint, those archways, those doors, those windows, the souks. So I dived into the Moroccan collection, and that, you know, again, vibrant colours, but sort of there's more browns in there, I suppose, more realistic colours, as one of my visitors said over the studio. And it just took another level, you know, but it's still at this point, it's like, well, okay, I'm still really happy with those. I've got the colour in there, but still, what next? Now I'm wondering if there's one more on the end here. Oh no, that's just me at the end. That's me at the end. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to changing that semi-abstract boats, buildings and beaches, because I suspect that that's not what's coming next. I suspect it's more about colour. I suspect there'll still be some semi-abstract. I suspect there'll be abstract. And although I still love the shapes of boats, buildings and beaches, I think they will be more like those first one, the turquoise and the red, in that the shape will be in there, but it will be more abstract than not. You know, I don't think we'll have doorways and windows and palm trees. We'll have strong, bold colours, shapes. And I've already started playing, actually. I can lose that now. Are we going back to...
Let's go back to full screen. Yeah.
So I'm ending the show.
Lovely. Yeah. Well, that was super. What a lovely tour. Thank you. And yeah, I'm so glad that it's the aliveness in you and in your art is just really palpable. I'm just so pleased that you are doing this exploring and finding, even if you don't know exactly what it is, the next step or whatever. I mean, that's what's so exciting about it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting. And it's, again, staying conscious to step into that, who am I and what what is my message, and not be allowed to, you know, be overtaken by, oh, that looks good over there. It's the distraction, and it's the, oh, that one's better than mine, but it's not mine. And I think that's a definite weakness. So I think it's getting into that process and refinding the process. I know what I was going to say at the end of that part about the buildings, boats and beaches. So as well as painting, you know that I also started weaving.
Yes.
And so I want that to inform the painting as much as possible. I want the two things to actually sit side by side. And so for the new collection of weaving, which I've started already, I've taken the theme of WA beaches, but if you were to look from above, look down on somewhere like the Kalbarri coastline, when the tide is low and there are all these kind of pockets or pools of turquoise where the water goes down. I've seen a few photographs of these round areas against the rusty sort of red and the sand and all of that. And so I've just taken those shapes and I've started creating a weaving with those round shapes, and like as if the water and the rocks and the sand and all the texture around. So watch this space, who knows, that might be then how the painting goes. So we're still ignited by those things. The boats don't light me up here though, because there's no little old fishing boat.
I was going to say the boats are boring here.
They're really boring. I think the boats might be going out the door. I think that the shape of a building, no matter, I think the shape of a building will still inform, and I think coastline and rocks will inform, and I think that's as much as I need to worry about. And then it's about color, and then the last piece is really how much texture. Is texture play, is texture process, is texture warm up, or is texture in the weaving and not in the painting? I can't answer that question at the moment because I don't know. It's all a journey, right?
Well, I loved all those weavings and the way you had them next to paintings. I mean, when in the way you hung them in the exhibition, I just thought was fabulous. It was like, oh, you know, if I was buying, which one would I take? And because really both of them, they just
have the same sort of, and I think now it's just being about more intentional with that. I think when I did that, I had the painting, and then it's like, I'm going to choose the colors and make a weaving to go with the painting. But now it's almost like the two are an expression of the same thing. So if I'm inspired by that aerial view of Kalbarri and the beaches and the texture, then that needs to come into the painting, and then they will sit next to each other. So watch this space.
I just had this crazy idea. Never mind the boats. What about whale sharks? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
Never mind the boat. I still keep going and photographing them, and I'm like, nah, they don't do anything for me.
Yes, they certainly don't have the character of those European and English boats, do they?
Little fishing boats that have been around for, you know, a long time, and they've been out to sea, and they've been weather beaten, and and they've got little strips of coloured paint, and they're, you know, painted different colours, and they've got little wonky bits on. And, you know, I spent a lot of my childhood in Suffolk, so on the Suffolk coastline in Aldeburgh there, and Aldeburgh, Walberswick and Southwold, my favourite little places on the East Coast. And they were old beach huts, painted all these different colours. And when the sun would go down, or the sun would start setting all these shadows across the sand, and then these wooden structures in the sand, and then the old boats, like it's a world that's so far from here that, you know, I've closed the door on it. It's time to close the door on that and open an even bigger door to the next part of the journey.
Yeah, lovely. Well, that's super. Thank you so much, Sophie.
That's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other things? Is there anything you'd like to say? Anything more?
Okay, let me just, is there anything down here that I wrote on? I think we've answered that, haven't we? Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's all good. Like I said, you know, ask me in 6 months' time, but I think it's all good for now.
Well, we might do a return.
Well, we should do a return. Perhaps we should actually do that and see in 2022. You know, how did that how did that come out? What happened?
Beautiful. Oh, I love it. I love that. You know, we've talked about this before, that growth mindset, continually growing and
checking in with yourself. Is this what I want to do? Is this my, or am I being informed by an outside influence? And I think most of my life I've been informed by an outside influence, apart from really when I was right back at that Tobias. And I thought I'd got that photo on the screen, but I realized I don't have it digital. I don't have a digital image of that piece, but that sticks in my mind, and I think I pick up there and see what happens. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Thank you.
See you again.